This podcast is brought to you by the North Dakota Petroleum Foundation. From heating our homes and powering our vehicles to cell phones, clothing, and medical equipment, oil and natural gas makes everyday life better. North Dakota Oil and Natural Gas, advancing the possibilities. Learn more at ndpetroleumfoundation.org. Welcome to Plain Talk Live. I'm your host, Rob Port. So Fargo had some just terrible news recently where a young woman, a 14-year-old girl by the name of Jupiter Paulsen, was brutally attacked and murdered. She was riding her skateboard on her way to her mother's house. She was stabbed in excess of 20 times. I want to say dozens of times. She was stabbed.
It was over 45 times.
Horrible. The attack lasted, they're thinking about a half an hour. She fought for life for days before finally succumbing. She was just honored at a memorial over the weekend. But the man arrested for the crime, his name is Arthur Prince Kollie. He has a lengthy criminal track record, and he was out on probation at the time that he was arrested for this crime. And a lot of people, because North Dakota, like a lot of other states in the union and like at the federal level, has been making a lot of progress towards criminal justice reform and a push away from incarceration toward other sorts of treatments or other ways of handling people who may have criminal problems than just sticking them in a prison cell. But the reaction to the murder of Jupiter Paulsen has some people questioning whether we've gone too far with that, whether maybe we've become too lenient on crime in North Dakota. So here to talk with me about that is Jay Thomas, host of the on WDAY AM970 in Fargo, and it probably helps if I transition to the right screen. There we go. There's Jay's happy face as we discuss what is not a happy topic at all. Jay, what do you think of that? I mean, first of all, obviously you've covered this story pretty extensively, and I know that your audience has given you a lot of feedback on this. What do you make? I mean, for people who say that we've gone too far in terms of criminal justice reform in North Dakota, do you think they're right?
Here's what I think the problem is. It is not just in North Dakota; it's around the country, but we're feeling it here. You have jails and prisons that are overcrowded. I get that. I think there's people in jail that shouldn't be in jail. And there's people that are not in jail that walking the streets like this guy that should be in jail. In this case, I think the courts and the Department of Corrections not only let Jupiter's family down, but they let the community down. There is no way in hell that Arthur Kollie should have been walking the streets, that this guy was nailed as a felon, a violent felon is what he got. He beat the living hell out of a guard in jail, okay? He gets out, he's on probation, again, a violent felon, and he's got a handgun that goes off in his apartment, and he gets basically a slap on the wrist. Not to mention everything else in this guy's criminal past that we know about. Of course, we don't know about the juvenile stuff because that's all sealed. And then just days before this, he was raising hell at a bar in downtown Fargo. There is no way that this man should have been. And I almost choked trying to say the word man. There is no way this person should have ever been free on the streets of Fargo. And look, you know what? We have a serious drug problem in this country, including our neck of the woods. And this guy's high on meth. That still gives him no leeway or gives him a right to do what he did. I don't feel sorry for this guy. He's had multiple chances to straighten his life up. He even sent a letter, I don't know if you saw it, to the judge in one of the cases where I'm going to turn my life around. I'm going to do this. Again, the courts and the criminal justice system let the family down. They let the community down. And instead of doing slaps on the wrist for some of these crimes, you need to send a message that this will not be tolerated in North Dakota and stick these people in jail and let them ride their sentence out. We just had, was it last week, another shooting outside a bar. This guy decided he was going to, start waving a gun around to patrons, and then a couple blocks away, he allegedly, let me use the word alleged, hasn't been had his day in court yet. He's firing shots off. Okay, and they found him. Law enforcement found him. Let's see what happens with this guy. We had a guy that was murdered outside a bar a couple weeks back here in Fargo as well. I don't know where that's at right now, if they found this guy, but it seems that, Rob, these people that are committing these violent acts are getting slaps on the wrist and being sent out in society. And if you talk to anybody in law enforcement, that's one of the most frustrating things. And you can't pin this on the police because this kid, I see, this is your police department, not do. No. The police don't know when something's going to happen. Okay. You talk to law enforcement officers, whether it's your local city, your sheriffs, your highway patrol, they'll all tell you the same thing. They are sick and tired of arresting the same people over and over. They arrest them. They're back out on the streets, sometimes within hours, sometimes days. And a lot of times they're back out. The next crime they commit is even more violent.
Do you, and I think it's fair. This is not really a police debate, because this is stuff that's happening when the people are in the system, right? I mean, these are decisions being made by prosecutors. These are decisions being made by judges. My rebuttal to this, I mean, he had the violent assault. He was in jail. He had the assault on a prison guard. That's the only violent crime that we know about on his record. The firing off a weapon was a misdemeanor, obviously not a good thing. He has also unlawful possession because he was a felon, and you can't own a gun or possess a gun if you're a felon. But those aren't specifically violent crimes. He had, the bar fight was misdemeanor violence, at best. One thing that I struggle with is the fact that those sorts of criminal records are common, very common. And if you look at them in the aggregate, the people who have those sorts of records are not brutally murdering somebody who just happens to be walking down the street, which is what Mr. Kollie is alleged to have done. So I have a hard time what I worry about is that we're taking this situation, this horrible, horrible murder of Jupiter Paulsen, and we're going to use that as the basis to promote criminal justice reform or to promote a change in the way we handle these people. I don't know that it's fair to look back. I think some people are guilty of the Fargo Forum had an editorial about this as well, where they kind of made a lot of the same points you did. And what worries me is that it's very easy to say that we should have known what we now know, right? It's easy to look back with 20/20 hindsight and say, well, we should have known that this guy was going to be trouble, but I'm not sure it's as easy as that, right? I mean, it's easy to say now, yeah, it sure looks like he murdered somebody, but do we know that when he came out of prison? Can you make those decisions? And do you want to treat everybody who had the sort of criminal record that he did as though they're going to murder somebody? Because that to me seems like we're going to roll back a lot of the good we've done, and we're going to put a lot of people who maybe could be out, could be trying to find a path to being upstanding citizens. We're going to put them back in jail. We're doing that sort of thing is impossible.
Look, here's the problem. The problem is, and I've had law enforcement officers tell me this too, that they're frustrated, they're sick and tired of these state's attorneys and others not wanting to do their job. They don't want to do a job unless they know it's a slam dunk. So they'll plea bargain this stuff out, and this is what happens. Look, you know what? I get what you're saying, but listen, if you are, this kind of even ties in with the gun laws. We want to get rid of gun violence. Okay. Well, here's a prime example. Okay. This guy is a violent felon who had a firearm that he fired off in his apartment. Thank God it didn't go through a wall and hit somebody or kill somebody. And he gets a slap on the wrist. And if you look at his criminal record, this guy isn't even paying his damn fines. Okay, it's a $500 fine for this. He's not paying them. And he's not getting hauled off to. This guy should have been put back in jail. He had an opportunity. When he got out of jail, he had an opportunity to straighten his life out. He knew what the rules were. The rules were, you're a felon convicted. You will not have a firearm. You will not get in trouble. What did he do? He fires off, number one, he has a gun, which he should not have had. He fires that thing off in an apartment, whether it was accidental or intentional. He gets in a fight at bar. This guy is not following the rules. He should have not been on the street. That's your reform. That's your reform right there. You are to follow the rules. So the rules of your probation say this. If you can't follow those rules, then we're going to stick your ass back in prison. But we send a message that, oh, well, you screwed up, no big deal. And that word gets out on the street. It is time to crack down. I'm not saying, Rob, that everybody goes to jail for every little thing, because you and I both know if we walk through the prisons in this state, you and I could sit there and make a list of what are you in here for? Well, I had a pound of marijuana. Did you sell it to anybody? Did anybody get? No, I just had it for my use. You're out. Oh, did you have some coke? You're out. What did you do? You broke somebody. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there are people in there that really should not be in there, but yet we got folks like this walking the streets that should be, and we hear, well, we're crowded. There's not enough room at the inn. Well, let's fix that. That's your reform.
Yeah, I think you make a really fair point, because Mr. Kollie's last interaction with law enforcement before he was arrested for Jupiter Paulsen's murder was the bar fight in Fargo. Well, at the time he was engaged in the bar fight in Fargo, he was on probation.
Yep.
With all the record keeping and everything that's available, how did the law enforcement, because there was a thing where the probation officials were looking for him after he'd been arrested in the bar fight. Well, you had him. You had him in custody after the bar fight. Why didn't you keep him? I think that's a fair question to ask. And that's not blaming the cops. That's a decision that's got to be a policy that gets made over the heads of the rank and file beat officers who are the ones who arrested.
It's going to be the probation office. So corrections. Yeah, that's who makes that decision.
I think that's a fair thing. But what I'm struggling with is this idea that we should have known that this guy was going to, I just don't think, looking at his track record, again, you and I could probably go through our personal friends and find people who made some serious mistakes at one point in their life and found redemption. Yeah. And so what I'm worried is that I don't want to put somebody who got super drunk. I mean, discharging a firearm like that is a terrible thing to do. There's just no defense for it. But we all know people who have struggled with substance abuse and did horrifically stupid things, but yet they managed to put their lives back together. So it's such a difficult. Somewhere there was a judge because we give judges and prosecutors we give them a lot of discretion, and so somewhere there was a judge who made a decision that Kollie should be out on probation, should be on the street, and there was a prosecutor that probably went along with that as well. And they probably made that decision based on all of their experience, that they didn't think that he was going to be a risk to the public. Now, in this specific incident, obviously, it sure looks like they were wrong. But I don't want the pendulum to swing. I feel like we've made so much good progress. I don't want the pendulum to swing back in the other direction, to where we're going back to the throw the book, put them all in jail attitude. I don't want to go back to that.
Well, no, I get that. But again, you know what? This doesn't come down to, well, we should have known. This comes down to this guy was on probation. There were rules to follow. He broke the rules multiple times, and he was still on the street. So follow the rules you got in place. I don't want to turn this into gun talk, but let's go. But we've had an ongoing debate for decades in this country about gun violence, and it's the same crap from these politicians on both sides of the more the left than the right, of course.
Let's write more laws. Let's write more laws.
Yeah, let's make more laws. How about you crack down on the laws you currently have, like this guy right here? Granted, he didn't use a firearm in the murdering of Jupiter, but you know what? He would have been behind bars because he broke one of the firearm rules or laws in this country.
Yeah,
we're not enforcing the laws and rules that are on the book.
And also, like, if you're out on probation for another crime and then you get into a bar fight and you're drunk and you're clearly abusing substances, maybe that's evidence that, hey, maybe this guy isn't doing well out on probation, and we need to bring him back into custody. And that doesn't necessarily have to mean jail. I mean, to me, if anything, I think that this case could be an argument for continuing down the road we're going. Are there people? Would there be more space for people like Mr. Kollie? Right? Would it be easier if he's out on probation and the issue with the firearm, the issue with the bar fight? Is it easier to put him back in the system if we're not putting maybe other people in jail who shouldn't be there. Like a lot of the stuff we're doing with like DUI offenders, where we have like mandatory jail sentences and stuff like that. Listen, a social drinker who made the terrible choice to drive after having too much to drink is not a violent person, right? I mean, they may be struggling with substance abuse, and they may be making other decisions, but putting them in jail doesn't help. I feel like so much of these problems is that we're allocating law enforcement resources poorly, and that creates a system, or creates a situation where somebody who needs more resources, like this Kollie fella, doesn't get them, or gets overlooked, or falls through the cracks, or however you want to describe it. I feel like there's an argument here where if we reallocated our resources better, we could treat somebody like Kollie, whether that's incarceration, whether that's getting him into some sort of a rehabilitation program, or whatever it is. We can handle them better if we were doing less of all the nonsense.
Well, let's look at this too. I mean, we have, how many people are incarcerated due to drugs or alcohol?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. I mean,
and that's a hard thing, because a lot of times a drug charge will come like they had marijuana in their pocket while they were robbing somebody, right?
But
I mean,
where I'm going with this is we have people that are incarcerated with severe drug and alcohol issues, not because they had a doobie or something on them.
Right.
And I don't know if there's mandatory treatment, even though mandatory treatment, if you don't want to get on board the program, it can be squat. But where I'm going with this is you got a lot of people in prison that once they get out, they're right back to their old habits. They become better criminals in prison. It's almost like a school for them. They just become better at their craft. We got to figure out, how do we turn these people's lives around when they're in prison? Now you have people go, hey, that's not my problem. It is your problem if they get out of prison and all they did was went to school to learn to be a better drug user, a better criminal. Just throwing them behind bars and not mandating some kind of treatment. And you cannot treat drug addiction treatment like alcohol. It's not the same. 30 days doesn't fix somebody.
There is you make a really good point. In 2016, the Department of Justice's National Institute of Justice, they released a brief, and based on research, they found that prison sentences, and in particular long prison sentences, don't stop future crime. Right? I think a lot of times we think of jail as a deterrence, and that's not to say that jail isn't an appropriate outcome for people who commit, depending on the crime being committed. Some people just got to go to jail, right? There's just no other way to deal with them. But we also tend to forget that most people who go to jail are going to get out again one day. And what we're finding is that people who go to prison sentences, it's not stopping future crime. Like somebody who goes to prison is not less likely to commit a crime in the future. And I think that's something we've really got to grapple with. Sticking people in jail, are you making them worse? And especially somebody, Kollie, and I do not want to paint him as a sympathetic figure at all. He's innocent until proven guilty. He's going to get his day in court. I'm not defending him, but he clearly had mental health issues. Did putting him in jail exacerbate those things? Would putting him in jail again have made him worse? I mean, even if you got him on the gun charge and you put him back in the system, or you got him after the bar fight and you put him back in the system, when he's not going to be in there forever. And when he reemerges, is he going to be better or is he going to be worse?
Depends on the person. It depends on if the person wakes up and says, you know what, this is not the path I want to go down. We don't know. All I know is that this guy should have never been on the street. He should have never been on the street. And if our prisons are that full in North Dakota, and again, I don't want to paint North Dakota as a terrible place because I love it here, and this is a problem all around the country. But again, if North Dakota is this jammed with prisoners, okay, we need to sit down and take a hard look at, okay, again, who are we putting in jail? Why are they going to jail? Is it an offense worth putting in jail? And you know what? The state's flushing cash. Then build another damn prison in the state.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's it. But also, again, most of the people who go to jail get out again, or most of the people who go to prison get out again. And so I really want to be focused on what are we doing while we have them in the system to make it so that they're not going to commit. Because what's the point? You go, you put somebody in, they come out, and they're as bad as they ever were. What's the point, Jay?
Exactly.
Right? I mean,
Good point.
there's got to be some. I don't think we're accomplishing anything other than, I guess, when we had them in jail, they weren't committing any crimes. But again, people forget that almost all of the people who go to jail will get out one day, and they should get out one day, right? Because their crimes aren't serious enough to keep them in jail forever.
But this is the tough question. This is, what do you do? How do you fix this? I don't know if there's a fix, but I do know the first step, and the first step again is you were in prison, you were let out, and this isn't just Kollie, this is anybody. You were let out early. You have rules to follow. It's pretty simple rules.
Yeah.
Let's see. Don't have a firearm. Maybe in some cases, don't do drugs, which, okay, if you're addicted, that's going to be tough, but here are the consequences. And the problem is we don't have consequences. These folks are breaking the rules on probation or on parole, and there's nothing happening to them. You need to start there and send a message. Look, we are not messing around with you in North Dakota. We told you. You got some of your freedom back. We warned you. These were the simple steps you had to do to stay out of prison. You couldn't follow those simple steps, then you're going right back and you're finishing your sentence. And maybe that'll wake some of these people, or a lot of them go, whoa, they don't mess around in North Dakota.
I don't want to say that there's no consequences, but I think it gets back to, you had him on, he was on probation, he got in a bar fight, you had him in custody. Why'd you keep him in custody, right? If he's on probation, revoke the probation, put him back in the system. And then if we don't have the resources in the system to be doing that sort of thing, then let's have that debate. But there's trade-offs all over the place, because I'll tell you one thing that North Dakotans don't like is paying taxes. Who anywhere likes paying taxes? And we're willing to pay taxes for effective things, but if the throw the book at them approach, I mean, building a new jail in a county or something, or maybe building a new prison at the state level, that costs money. And not just a one-time expense to build the facility. You got to staff it, which means you got to hire guards, you got to hire administrators, you got to hire somebody to be in charge of the facility. It is expensive to do that.
As a taxpayer, though, as a taxpaying citizen in North Dakota, I wouldn't have a problem with it if it meant that our cities and our streets are safer. I wouldn't have a problem with it at all. Or you do this. Now, of course, this is why I'm not in charge of stuff like this, because I come up with, how about this? All right, Kollie, you were on probation, convicted violent felon. You had a firearm, the firearm discharged. Now, you're not supposed to have that. You broke the rules to prison. Well, we don't have room in a prison. Oh, you don't have room in a prison? Okay, let's take a look at your roster and see who on that roster can take a hike today and leave. Okay, you're in there for what? This? You did out. Put Kollie in there. It comes down to, you've got to stick by and follow the rules, the laws that you have.
Honestly, I think because not unfairly, you've brought up the gun debate several times, and that's obviously related to this, because Kollie had a gun charge in his back, or a gun situation in his background. I feel like that's an area where the right and the left could find, if we could let go of some of the partisanship and tribalism that plagues these issues. I think that's an area where we could find some common ground. As a pro Second Amendment person, almost a Second Amendment absolutist, who very much believes in the importance of that right, I am all in favor of throwing the book at the people who break the law. Like if you are like skirting, trying to illegally skirt like background checks, or you committed a felony and you had your gun rights removed, and then you violate that law anyway, I am for throwing the book at those people. Those are not lawful gun owners. Those are not responsible gun owners. There should be consequences if you're an irresponsible.
That's the problem right there. It's also, we moved a gun, but it does tie into this. There's the problem right there. See, what happens is you have the politicians, they instantly go to their typical talking points. Well, we're going to crack down on assault weapons. I just find that hilarious, that word assault weapons. We're going to crack down on the amount of ammunition you can have. It's not us. It's the criminals that are doing this.
They're making it harder.
Slapping them on the wrist.
Right.
Those are the people you crack down on.
A criminal uses a gun to commit a crime, and then the crackdown hits all the people who own their guns
Us,
legally
yeah,
and
us
and
law
and
abiders.
use them responsibly, people like you and I. So absolutely, I agree with you there. What do you think? As we go, like what would you like to see in terms of like policy making? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a law. Like it could just be enforcing existing laws, like we've been talking about. But what would you like to see after the situation with Jupiter? I would like to see something positive come out of this. I mean, if you could say that there's anything positive about a young woman losing her life, which as a father, I got to tell you, I mean,
I could imagine.
reading the story, it's like a punch in the gut. I mean, it's just terrible.
This beautiful young girl was going from dad's house to mom's house to get her Arby's uniform to go to work to her new job. And this is what happened at 7 o'clock in the morning in broad daylight, right just off a main thoroughfare, 13th Avenue here in Fargo. It's pathetic. Honestly, here's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see, I know you're probably not going to like this, but you know what? Let's get these lawmakers, wake up. Let's get Jupiter's Act or whatever you want to call it. And it's simply this. We in North Dakota now, under Jupiter's Act, there is going to be no more slap on the wrist. If you are on parole or probation and you break that parole or probation, you will not get a fine. You are going directly back to jail to finish your entire sentence. Maybe that will wake some of these people up and they realize if I screw up, I got to go back and finish my ride, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Let's start there. That's not a new law. That's not new rules. That's not just doing a zero tolerance. Well, it is a zero tolerance, but it's a zero tolerance on the people that should be following the rules that are already on the books. Start there. We don't have room in jail. Well, let's go through our jails and start cleaning house.
My readership, I end up corresponding with a lot of people who work in the state's criminal justice system, criminal defense attorneys, and I know you too, Jay. Cops, criminal defense attorneys, prosecutors, judges, and I think particularly from like the prosecutors and the judges, what they would respond to what you're saying is we got to have discretion because it's very easy to make broad statements, but every case that comes before them is a unique individual. And this is one of the big challenges to public policy and is we have to make laws for the aggregate, right? We have to make laws based on the hypothetical, saying if you commit this sort of crime, this is the crime, this is the sentence. But every case is unique and involves unique individuals and unique circumstances. And so the judges and the prosecutors are saying, give us discretion. We want to have discretion. And that's nothing was stopping.
But they've been given discretion, and this is what happens.
Right. Well, that's right. Nothing was stopping officials from saying, from revoking his probation. There was no law that said that he had to continue to be out on probation after the firearm charge or after the bar fight or after he'd been found to be abusing substances again. Nothing said that he had to be allowed out. It was a matter of discretion. We have these laws on the books, but the people in charge of enforcing them they're exercising a lot of discretion, and they're being in some cases pretty lenient. So how do you fix that? I mean,
are they being lenient? Are they being lenient too because they're looking at it? And look, I'm not trying to toss every judge and every state's attorney or prosecutor under the bus. I'm not. There are really good ones.
Up to and including I think the folks in charge of making the decisions for Mr. Kollie, because again, we know what he's alleged to do now. How are they supposed to know?
They should, but again, I go back to you should have known. The guy was a convicted felon with a gun. What the hell? Back to jail you go. There's no discretion there. But I think it comes back to these judges, these prosecutors, these state's attorneys. Where are we going to put them? We don't have room. That's what we've heard. I mean, during the pandemic, we were not putting people in jail for DUIs. We're just letting them go, and you return on your own recognizance. It should somebody go to jail for. Point is, you need to take a look at who you have behind bars. What are they behind bars for? And start. Look,
but I'm
not a zero tolerance guy. I don't like that. You're right, Rob. Each situation is different.
Yeah.
But come on, damn it, you got to use some discretion here. And be smart about it.
And I want to be careful. I don't think that they're just making these decisions that it's just a resource decision that they're saying let this guy out because we don't have room in jail. I think a lot of times too, It's a judge saying, is this person going to be helped by being stuck back in the system, or are they going to be worse? Because I think that's a fair question to ask too.
Yeah, that's a
This
fair
this
question.
person who has mental health issues or whatever, if I put him back in jail, is he going to get better or is he going to get worse? Right? I know that judges are asking themselves that question, and there's not an easy answer. And we're asking, we're asking these folks to like look into a crystal ball and try to see what's going to happen in the future. I'm glad I don't have to make those decisions.
No, I don't want to make that decision. But again, in some cases, you don't need a crystal ball. You have somebody that blatantly will not follow the rules. And the rules are this, this, and this. You're on parole probation. You broke it not once, you broke it multiple times. You are going back to jail.
You and I,
this time
yeah.
around, get with some groups, do whatever, and learn to be a better person.
You and I disagree on this a little bit, but I like the direction that you're heading, in that, we need to talk about how we're enforcing the laws that are already on the books. I like that. I like that. But I also think that if you're going to do that, it needs to be a larger sort of reform where we're looking at it not just in, we need to get tougher on people who are violating some of this stuff, but also who are the people that we can get out of the system faster, so that we,
exactly.
We're spending too much time on them. We're making them jump through too many hoops. How can we move those people through the system faster to free up resources so that we can do some of what you're talking about, where you're out on probation, you get in a bar fight, you're going back in for a while. And then we're going to assign some people to talk to you. What are the problems here? Are you continuing to do abuse drugs? Do you have mental health issues that need to be addressed? Do you need to be put on some sort of medication? That's what we need to be focused on. And
I mean, you can look at it and go, look, you're on probation. Yeah, and you're right. You look at each situation. You got to give some discretion. Okay, you got a bar fight. You weren't doing anything wrong. You were behaving yourself. Somebody came up and went after you. You're just defending yourself. Should you go back now and finish up your sentence? Well, wait a minute. Were you supposed to be in a bar? I mean, you got to look at everything. Sure. What were you doing in a bar? If you weren't supposed to be in a bar, then you would not have gotten this. Yeah, you just got to look at it, and you got to send them, because I'm telling you, the message that we're setting in North Dakota is, get in trouble, no big deal. You're not going to do any real time. You're going to be, and if you do time, it's going to be quick. You're back out and working on your craft.
The other thing too is I would like to see more focus. I mean, listen, state's attorneys are elected. And so are judges. When was the last time one of these elections was competitive?
But Rob, you know, and I know, we go to vote. These judges, a lot of these, there's nobody out there going after their slot. Yeah. They're just that's your. I don't know if you've ever had them on your program, and we need more of this around North Dakota. I think you know what Adam Martin is, F5 Project.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Adam Martin. We need more of what Adam Martin is doing.
Yeah, I agree.
People get out. I mean, Adam and his organization is doing fantastic things, working with these people, making sure that these people have a path to go down. These people being people that are coming out of prison, and a lot of times they're felons, and he's working with them. His organization works with them, helps with housing, jobs, everything else. So they feel there's somebody there for them. We need to see that program like his expand even more.
Some people are going to make terrible choices, and it doesn't matter what we do to do them. They're going to make criminal choices, and there have to be consequences for that. But a lot of people, I think, I'm a strong believer in redemption, and I am so admiring of the work that people like Adam are doing. Because listen, you make a mistake, you're 20 years old, and you do something, you steal from somebody, or you do something colossally stupid. That person is never going to get better if they don't have an avenue to go down, right? If they just feel like, okay, well, now you're a felon, now you can't get a job, or you can't get a good job, and nobody wants to live by and all these things, and now you're walking around with a scarlet letter on your chest the rest of your life. How do you ever? Is it any wonder that those people might struggle with substance abuse, right? Or they might struggle, or they might resort to crime again, to try to make ends meet. I'm not justifying those behaviors, but if we put a lot of the people who we kick out of the criminal justice system, we have set them up for failure. Because
you know what, Rob? Here's another thing that we haven't discussed, and that is and you see it once in a while where judges will give out a very unique punishment for the crime. We used to have a judge here, Judge Davies, who sat on the bench here for years, and nobody wanted to go in front of Judge Davies because they knew the judge wasn't going to mess around, and he sometimes would give out some crazy sentences. look, you get caught shoplifting at a store, and didn't we in North Dakota did they a couple sessions ago bump the limit from $500 to $1,000 before it became a felony? I think.
Yeah, but I think that had a lot to do with inflation, right?
Yeah, I think it did. But my point is,
$500.
look,
Yeah.
you walk into a store and you're stealing stuff. No, we're not going to stick you in jail. We're not going to slap you with a fine. Guess what you're going to do? You're going to go work in that store, sweeping floors or something. You're going to go do something to give back what you took from that store. I like sentencing like that because I think it makes people think. It really does.
Yeah,
in some cases.
In some cases, and again, you're going to run into people who are just, for whatever reason, are just they're just going to make terrible decisions.
Yeah.
But I'm very much for redemption, right? Like you have a price to pay. You hurt some people, whether you hurt them economically, you hurt them physically. You hurt some people, and so there's a price to pay for that. But once you're done paying that price, there's got to be an avenue back to redemption. And maybe that's part of the Kollie story as well. Were we helping this guy enough, right? I mean, he obviously had entered the criminal justice system as a juvenile. Did that experience make him better or worse?
But you can't help somebody that doesn't want help. And he's been given opportunity. As far as I'm concerned, he could rot the rest of his life in jail. He's had opportunities at redemption. He chose the different path. And like you said, some people just, you can't.
Well, and that's
change him. So he can rot in prison for life.
And that's one of the dangers of trying to make public policy based on one person or one as horrific as it is, this one murder. Because again, any one individual just may not be the person who wants to go down that path. They may be the person who just for whatever reason is so. Anyway, well, Jay, I appreciate it. I think it's a good discussion, and there's as so many public policy debates. There's just no easy answers, but
no, there's not. There's there's not. Although you and I figured it out in a half hour.
Yeah. Like usual, we have all the. They should just make us co-dictators for like a week. We could clean up a lot of this stuff.
I'm going to start my new political party. It's going to be called the Garage Party.
The Garage Party.
The guys in the garage, you figure it out.
Yeah. Maybe I can. I'll have a cooperating party called the Leave Me Alone Party coalition.
Get off my lawn party.
Get off my lawn party. Yeah, that's mine. And just leave me alone. Well, Jay, I'll be on your show as usual Mondays 2 p.m. You can always catch Jay's show 2 to 5 p.m. WDAY AM970. Jay, thanks for your time.
You got it. We'll talk this afternoon.